Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have you say a very warm welcome to Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. So James Gunn has given us confirmation of the date Superman Legacy starts shooting. Very, very, very exciting for this Superman fan. It's January of 2024. I repeat, Superman Legacy begins shooting in January 2024. Well, there's a few months and quite a long time till that date, and of course anything can happen in the coal that is in the entertainment industry today. It's at a standstill right now because of this writer's strike. James Gunn has written one draft. He can't write any more drafts because of the writer's strike. But even though he says he won't write any more drafts because of the writer's strike, you can't trust these people. He could secretly write more drafts of Superman Legacy. He may need only one draft of Superman Legacy to go. But of course, we're talking about January. So you look at the writer's strike. Hopefully it will be over in the next 2 or 3 months. Anyway, things will quieten down and we can restart the industry with more creative bankruptcy. Here's the truth about Superman. Apart from Richard Donner's Superman the movie, Hollywood and Warner Brothers have struggled to make the character relatable. Here's the thing about James Gunn that even his haters can't deny. He made the Guardians of the Galaxy relatable. He made the characters of the Suicide Squad relatable. He made Christopher Smith, aka the Peacemaker, relatable. So maybe, just maybe, this is the writer-director to make Superman relatable. It would be a huge achievement for someone to do it. And you're going to shout at me, well, Superman was relatable in Superman Returns. Zack Snyder made him relatable in Man of Steel and BVS in the Snyder Cut. What are you talking about, Mick? I'm talking about making Superman relatable for a mass audience. And judging from the box office of Man of Steel and Superman Returns, that wasn't the case. And this is the responsibility that James Gunn has now, to make Superman relatable for a mass audience. And he's already proved that he can create character relatability because he's done it on numerous occasions. He's proven he can do it. But it's a huger challenge with Superman on a huger scale because he's a very famous, iconic character. And everyone has a defined idea of who Superman is and who Superman should be. I love Superman. Look, I love the guy's costume. I love the fact that he's got powers. But I love him because he's a sweet guy. He's pure-hearted. He's from a little, he's from a little Kansas country town. There's a piece of dialogue in Smallville, an exchange between Lana and Clark. And I think this sums up Superman and why I love him, and why I love Clark Kent. Lana is talking to Clark about not wanting to hold him back, that there's millions of people that he could be saving. He says this, which sums up the character, but Lana, there's not a million people in Smallville. This always chokes me up when I re-watch this scene and this episode. The episode is called Action. It's amazing. And the way Tom delivers this line just puts a lump in my throat. This shows you how naive and sweet this character is and how innocent he is. He has no intention at that time in his life of going out to Metropolis and saving millions of people. He just wants to live the same life he's always lived. He has no ambition. And I think that's a very interesting thing, because people accuse people with no ambition, who lack ambition, as bad people. But just because you don't have any ambition and you just want to live in the same place you've always lived, doesn't make you a bad person. Ambitious people don't see other people. They just see their own ambition. I was going through my all all the people that I follow on Instagram stories. It's follow this, do this. You know, there's women getting their bazookas out, right? So you can follow them. The ambition. There's these young women going to LA, you know, doing live videos of being in the pool while they're wearing a bikini. It's all about money, 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 money. It's about greed and over ambition. That's not who Superman is. And when you understand who Superman is, that's when you can go and write the best stuff for him. He's not ambitious. He never really wanted to leave Smallville, but he knew that he had to. He knew he had a destiny. He knew he had a responsibility to the world because that's who he is. Superman has power. And this is the difference between Superman and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor, the more power he gets, the more power and knowledge he wants. Superman, the more power and knowledge he gets, the less he wants. Growing up, Clark just wants to be an ordinary person. He wants to lose his power. He wants to give his power away. And if you go back to Smallville season 5, when he loses his powers and he's happy because he can be with Lana, because the whole thing is he can't even make love to Lana when he's got his powers because he's worried about hurting her. When he loses his powers, he's not so worried about it. But in Hidden, he realizes he is who he is, and there's no getting away from the power. So I think that's very interesting. Most people in the world strive for power. Superman doesn't want it. He's got it, but it's not something he thrives on. And this is why I love this character. And I think that James Gunn has got the ability to make this character relatable. Make him relatable in a way that others have struggled to do. If you look at what he did with Rocket, it was a very, very interesting character from Guardians Volume 1. This is, this is kind of a Han Solo type of character, if you like. You know, he's not exactly, he's not Mr. Calm and Collective. You can tell this character's got issues. We later find out of the cruelty he faced in Guardians Volume 3. This is what Gunn is able to do. He's able to distill his characters and show us their rough edges, then chip away those rough edges. And whether you like Gunn or not, he's very, very good at doing this. Another reason James Gunn may be the right person to write and direct a Superman movie, he's clearly not a big Superman fan. Superman Legacy isn't a passion project for James Gunn. You could call the Guardians trilogy a passion project for him. It's obvious the type of characters he prefers. He likes the outsiders because he has always felt like an outsider. He's spoken about Superman being an outsider. So that's an interesting thing. But because he's not a die-hard Superman fan, he can look at this character in a different way and maybe give him the things that he needs to give him. For example, Bryan Singer, when he was making Superman Returns, it was pretty clear it was a passion project. It was a love letter to Dick Donner, the director of Superman the movie. So he wanted to make the kind of movie that he made. In the end, in the box office, it didn't translate to the way WB wanted it to. Same with Man of Steel. But James Gunn has other qualities that maybe the other people who have made Superman haven't. Because I've mentioned this before, this is not the time to be edgy with Superman. We've seen edgy Superman, we've seen him in the darker costumes. It's time to make Superman Superman. It's time to stop having two magnets face each other and resist each other. It's time to stop shaving upwards against the grain. This film cannot be against the grain. This has to be the best superhero film ever. This has to be the most successful superhero film ever. There can be no excuses, and this is a huge, huge opportunity for James Gunn to do this. And it's absolutely huge. Whether the situation at Warner Brothers Discovery in the end will stop James Gunn making this movie, I don't know. There's so many situations in Hollywood right now. anything can happen. But we have got a Superman movie in development. It is a very, very exciting situation for this Superman fan, and I'm just wondering if this will be an open shoot. Superman Returns was an open shoot. We got a lot of pictures, at the time of the shooting of Bryan Singer, of Brandon Routh, and Spacey as Luthor, and lots of different things. It was a very exciting time. Now, Man of Steel was more of a secret shoot. We didn't know much about the movie. We got that shot of Superman by the safe, which was very exciting, and everyone was asking, is he wearing the pants or not? Is he wearing the trunks? Ultimately, he wasn't, and it was obvious he wasn't. Snyder was never putting him in the trunks, even though he claimed they did try some designs of that costume with the trunks, and they felt it didn't work. Now, for me, the trunks is not a big deal. I think James Gunn will give Superman the trunks because I think they're going in a very traditional Superman way. If you like that, great. If you don't have to be part of the party, and that's okay. But this film is about giving back to Superman fans and making Superman relatable. And that's important because there's become a very divisive nature in Hollywood. And I think that's been a big, big problem in where they are today. Hollywood right now is on fire. We keep on hearing these CEOs saying how much money they're losing on streaming and on films because they've driven out the talented people and brought in activists like Ava DuVernay to replace them. Very exciting news yesterday. Ava DuVernay's deal with Warner Brothers was not extended. This woman was on more money than Steven fucking Spielberg. She was trying to get the new Gods DC movie. I never want that woman on a DC movie. And because her deal hasn't been extended, that's never ever going to happen, hopefully. Although, if J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates-Black's Superman movie does happen, maybe she'll direct it. I think she's a woman who couldn't direct Traffic. I don't think she's ever done anything of note. How this woman had one of the most expensive deals with Warner Brothers, one of the biggest studios in Hollywood, is fucking outrageous. So we were talking about David Zaslav yesterday and his positives and negatives, and what I would say is that getting rid of her, not extending her deal, is one of the best things he's ever done. I used to follow her on Instagram. She's got me blocked. On Twitter, surprise, surprise, surprise. And some of the activist shit she used to post was absolutely inflammatory and disgusting. And I'm so glad she's not on Warner Brothers books. She's never proved that she's a great writer-director. And I've never understood, how she was involved with WB and how she had such a lucrative deal. Hopefully, we're moving away from the activists. For example, the guy who directed Blue Beetle. We saw the trailer. Batman is a fascist. Is Batman a fascist? Not in my book. How is he a fascist? Explain to me how Batman is a fascist. He's not a fascist, right? He's a man as a boy who saw his parents murdered. So he kind of grows up thinking, I've got to stop other children from suffering the fate that I did. This is a really corrupt city. And I, as a rich and powerful guy who's inherited his wealth, can use my wealth to help. There's no question with the Bruce Wayne Foundation, with the Wayne Foundation, he does give to needy causes in Gotham, right? But it doesn't matter how much money you've got. You can't solve the ills of the world. You can only, help one person at a time. So he's a hero. So he's not a fascist. He does use his money to help people who are poorer off than him. And obviously, we have extremists who have never seen a superhero movie before or read a comic before calling him a fascist. And of course, what happened on the day we saw that trailer, when Batman was called a fascist in the Blue Beetle movie, the director was laughing at people saying, it looks like I'm doing my job. In the end, he had to stop people commenting and lock his account. What did you think was going to happen? Did you think people were going to thank you for that? Do you think, you've just insulted the character that millions of people around the world love? What did you think was going to happen? But this is the problem. Another fucking activist. That Blue Beetle director is another person I still follow on Instagram. And again, the shit the guy posts is fucking inflammatory. And these are the type of people that must be removed from our industry. And that's why I have a preference for James Gunn and people like James Gunn. James Gunn knows this industry is in the bin. That's why he spoke about his DC universe being about love, right? Love and entertainment, not science and politics. He understands, by saying this, he understands it's time to stop putting the magnets together. The closer you put the magnets, the more they'll resist. The more you shave against the grain, the more times you'll draw blood. Do you understand? You can capture more people with, sugar rather than vinegar. And that's how it works. And James Gunn is very much aware of this. I don't care if you like him. I don't care if you don't. I've had some concerns about him. Of course I have. He's writing and directing my favourite character. I'm looking at his history in terms of films, and I've had some concerns. And now I'm a balanced guy, and I'm trying to look at it in an open mind. But I do look at the fact that this guy has made characters that you wouldn't think could be made relatable in the mainstream, and he's made them relatable. And Superman is one of the toughest characters to make relatable. When you've got a character who's from another planet, who's all powerful, the obstacles that you have to put in his way, as they did in Smallville, must be emotional. Clark's emotions about wanting to give away his power, his relationship with Lana, a young woman who saw her parents decimated by the kryptonite meteor shower that arrived with Clark. Clark feels bad. Clark feels it's his fault. Of course, Lana is a reasonable, lovely young woman. She's never going to blame Clark for that. Clark feels bad for Lex being bald and being infected by the meteors. We get that thing, it's not your fault, Clark. But Superman always blames himself. That's who he is. So Smallville understood that he has to be all powerful. He has to have his powers. He has to fight, he has to fight supervillains and villains. But the obstacles, if they can be emotional, are a beautiful thing. So he's up against Lex and Lionel. He's got this early friendship with Lex, makes things really compelling. Lionel Luthor is the villain of Smallville, and it's very compelling. And that is how you make Superman relatable, by putting emotional obstacles in his way. And Kryptonite, making Kryptonite a character in Smallville, was also a genius conceit, if you ask me. Making his weakness the biggest thing. And it was great because people used to say, why doesn't he just leave Smallville? So they had that in season 1. So he says to Jonathan, I just wish I could leave the meteors behind and leave Smallville. And Jonathan says, maybe one day, I'm sure you'll be able to do that. But running away and quitting is a hard habit to break. So that's the kind of smart writing we used to have in Smallville. And I think that James Gunn will use similar aesthetics. Already said, it's not a comedy. He does put a lot of jokes. Some people do not like his humour. I don't think all his humour hits. And there will be gags in Superman Legacy, as there was gags in Superman the movie. Superman Returns had some gags. They didn't really drop for me. They didn't really work for me. But they tried. Because Tom Mankiewicz, who rewrote the entire script of Superman the movie, was a funny guy. And, the stuff in it is genuinely funny. Even today, after all of these years. So you can make Superman Legacy funny in the right places, but it can't be a comedy. Superman is a bona fide serious character. But I do think that Gunn does have the ability to make Superman relatable and make his supporting characters relatable as well. With Superman Legacy now officially confirmed to start shooting in January, we should start hearing a lot of casting announcements in the next few months. Very, very exciting. So look out for that. Will he unveil his Superman at this year's San Diego Comic-Con? I think most probably it will be a great place to do it. We will see. I mean, he's still promoting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I thought he'd be done with the marketing of that by now. But this weekend is Mother's Day weekend. It's a big weekend in the United States, which means that he's continuing to promote it because there's money to be made this weekend. I expect Guardians of the Galaxy to have a 50% drop off this week. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I expect it to continue its solid but not great box office. I don't expect it to reach to $1 billion, but I think it's going to be the only Marvel movie in the next few years that's going to make a lot of money, because James Gunn has a following. People like the first two Guardians, or at least the first Guardians, like those characters, and they're going to come back for more because there's not really much being released in the next few weeks either. So yeah, he still hasn't made that $1 billion movie, but Superman Legacy must be his most successful, best reviewed movie to date. There's no question about it. When you're making a Superman movie, there is no hiding place. There's no question about that. Now, Zack Snyder has commented about the certification process to give Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice its rating. Now, originally, the certification board wanted to make Batman vs Superman, the original theatrical release, an R-rated movie. Because basically Batman and Superman were going to fight each other. He goes, yeah, but that's in the title, right? So somehow Batman vs Superman, the theatrical release, wasn't R-rated, but I think when they re-released it as the Ultimate Edition, I think that did get an R rating, if I remember rightly. The question I want to ask today: would Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, the original release, would it have been better off if it was R-rated? Would it have made more money if it was R-rated? The argument about an R rating, it takes away the family audience. Arguably, the family audience were never going to be there anyway. Think about the Joker movie. R rating over $1 billion. Because people were intrigued. At first, people were triggered. How can you give the Joker an origin story? Then we saw the first trailer and we started to think, shit, Todd Phillips may actually know what he's doing. Maybe his strengths are not just making free, good, hilarious hangover movies. Maybe he knows the Joker. Maybe he gets it. Guess what? He got it. He made one of the best CBMs of all time, inspired by Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, and it was excellent. Excellent. So I believe that Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, rating it R would have been a very controversial thing, and people would have lost their shit, and the predictions would have been like a box office bomb because of the R rating. But I think what an R rating does, especially for a CBM, it creates intrigue, as it did for the Joker. Should the Joker movie really have been an R-rated movie? No, I don't think it should have been. I think there's very little in that movie that tells me, oh my God, kids can't see this. Obviously, Robert De Niro getting his brains blown out isn't something you'd want children to see, but it was handled in a very responsible way. It's not really an action-packed, violent movie. I don't think there's... I can't remember if there is any swearing in the movie, but I just don't... I think WB went after the R rating purposely, and I think Todd did as well, just to create that mystique and intrigue about the movie. It triggered the extreme leftists, the activists. They went on and on about Joker being a dangerous movie. The Joker is an incel. Is there a bigger incel than Harley Quinn? Yes, women can be incels as well. The Joker isn't an incel. Arthur Fleck wasn't an incel. Arthur Fleck was a mentally ill man who took his support for his mental illness. It was taken away from him, from society. He was looking after his very ill mother, and the world kept on kicking him when he was down. Does that justify him killing people? No, of course it doesn't. But it's a building blocks of how we treat the mentally ill. He was a mentally ill person, not a man, a person. This could have happened, and this does happen to many, many people. And I've seen how this society works. Todd Phillips made an amazing movie, and that's why you should steer clear of listening to activists and nut jobs like Grace Randolph. Judge the movies for yourself. They told you if you went to see the movie, you could die. That's how fucking ridiculous these people are. But I do believe that even Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice would have made well over $1 billion if they actually rated it R, because as I say, it's the intrigue. And then they could have been honest in their marketing about the movie. It connects to what I was saying yesterday, because Zack Snyder is not holding back anymore about his process of making these 3 movies and his ideas. It's very, very interesting. Obviously, he's getting very cocky. Rebel Moon is coming out. He's very confident in that movie doing well for Netflix as well. But it does seem to me he's so confident he may be getting something over at DC Elseworlds. Don't be surprised if that happens. Something is certainly going on because Zack keeps on throwing hints. It's certainly factual to say that Zack hasn't moved on from his Snyderverse and he wants to finish his story arc off, and I hope he does over on Netflix or somewhere else or the Elseworlds banner. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. But imagining the original theatrical cut of Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice being R-rated, I think that would have been an excellent idea. I think also one of the reasons they probably removed half an hour from the movie, which made it 3 hours with the Ultimate Edition, was because it would have had to have been R-rated if they left those other sequences in. I'm kind of sure of that now. And so I think it would have been better not to mess with the movie, to leave that added half an hour in and make it an R-rated movie. But of course the studio thought they wouldn't make the money if, they wouldn't make the money if it was rated R. This is why people keep on criticizing Hamada and Emmerich for, bringing in another company to help them finance the Joker movie, because they were worried about the R rating. It wasn't because they didn't trust Todd Phillips. It's because they were worried about the R rating and it being edgy, that it wouldn't make the money that they wanted it to make if it wasn't R rated. In the end, it turned out well. But I'll say this, that Emmerich and Hamada were right to co-finance that movie, because that could have gone either way. And if it wasn't for the controversy, maybe it wouldn't have made the $1 billion plus in the first place. So, yeah, I don't blame them for co-financing that movie. I think you've got to understand the industry to understand why that happened. And, I don't think people should be worried about the WB not making as much money as they should have done at the end of the day. I'd be more worried about Ava DuVernay and all the money they were paying her for the past 5 to 7 fucking years for doing jack shit. Paying an untalented activist that money is more problematic than the Joker being co-financed. But would Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, would it have made more money if the original theatrical release was R-rated? Yes, I think it would have made quadruple the money, because of the reason that I've already said, because of the intrigue. Most R-rated movies create intrigue, but an R-rated CBM really does create intrigue. Just like the first Deadpool movie. That was R-rated, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm going to talk like it is. And it was. That movie is very, very violent. It's funny. It's sadistically funny, but it's very violent and funny. And that worked for the mystique of the movie. Because the audience get very dubious and suspicious when they realize that 2 characters are going to fight in a movie, Batman and Superman, but you're not R-rated. Because people have been talking about having an R-rated Batman for a very long time, a hard-edged Batman. And I think in a lot of ways, Batman vs Superman does kind of cross the line of being a hard R movie at times, especially with the Ultimate Edition, and I think if it was R-rated, it would have done the movie a hell of a lot of favours. This has been Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.